up, sports fans. Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready to close up the week here up on a Friday. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Thanks for making us part of your day. Jay Stepp is joining us, my co-host. We got through our picks last night, and I'm very confident. And what I talked about is I just had a feeling that in a division rival matchup game like Cleveland and Pittsburgh last night in the cold snow, I had to go with the underdog. I had to go with the underdog points at the end of the night. 3.5 smelt like a bargain deal. And we got exactly just that. But we got so much to talk about now because does New York ever get a break? I don't even know if any of these people in the state of New York ever go on vacation. It seems like every single day there's something on the news. I don't know what it is, but we'll talk more about it with Daniel Jones. I do want to start with this. So happy birthday to Chase. He got his birthday win with the Cleveland Browns. Here's what I will say for this game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, because this is why I took the underdog pick. And the reason of that is because AFC North matchups are never guaranteeable. It is betting 101 when it comes to how I proceed a lot of these bets. I necessarily don't even bet on these types of games because all four of these teams are unguaranteeable that they're going to win. We watched Baltimore go up against the Cleveland Browns. Once Deshaun Watson went down and in comes Jameis Winston, he threw in a little Jameis magic and ended up beating Lamar. And majority of America thought that Baltimore was going to beat the Browns. Nope, other way around. And then last night, what you got, and I know that there was inclement weather with the snow and with all of that, but yet the Pittsburgh Steelers on a shortened week against a team and a division rival who even if they may not be true division rivals, I mean, I feel like all four of them are in their own equal way, Cleveland got the win. And Myles Garrett, once again, is proving to us why he is such a dominant force at the edge position. Okay, I love TJ Watt, but there was a point where TJ Watt could not generate anything. But this is typical. Usually a lot of the strong teams, I feel like at the end of the night, I don't even think Pittsburgh really cared about that loss. Hopefully that's the case because they then have their schedule, and that's where they got to go in against the next opponents by the time the playoffs are around the corner. But we know it stings because they lose to a division rival on a short week. I get that. But deep down, I mean, when I look at Pittsburgh's remaining schedule, here's what we know about them at 8-3. They got to play the Bengals. They got to play the Browns again. They got the Eagles. They got the Ravens. They got the Chiefs. They got the Bengals. That's not an easy route. So they may drop that first game against Cleveland, but you just heard the whole slate. They got to play Cincinnati twice. They'll play Cleveland for a second time, and then this time it will actually be on a Sunday, not on a Thursday night. Then they got to play Philly, and then they got to play Baltimore for the second time before they got to face the Chiefs. I don't know about you guys, but that's exactly where I felt like there was a bit of a stinger. But hopefully Pittsburgh doesn't bury their head in the sand after this loss, because it's a much tougher road ahead. And a lot of those teams, I can tell you right now, all those AFC North teams, Cleveland probably wants to do it again. I don't know if they may do it a second time, probably for more of drafting spot purposes, in my opinion. I think that's what they're kind of fixated towards. But it was good getting a win against Pittsburgh. It was good. But they're thinking more about their draft spot. Then I look at Cincinnati twice, and you know how pissed off Cincinnati is. Their season's not going their way. And you got Joe Burrow. You got to find a way to end up attacking that offense. And for the next two times. And then Lamar and Baltimore. I mean, we know Baltimore has had a history to where they don't even play well against Pittsburgh. But I think that lingers in Lamar's head. And then there's Kansas City, who it don't even matter what any week it is. Kansas City just knows how to play against certain teams. And I think Philadelphia, here's an interesting one for you. Okay, Philadelphia, they have a very good defense. I feel like they're kind of catching fire a bit. Saquon Barkley, you got to figure out a way to stop that run. I think they probably could, but it may not come as easy. I feel like that one might be a fight tooth and nail. But this is kind of where the critical parts start coming up for Mike Tomlin. And I know Mike Tomlin's been in this thing for a very long time. But a schedule like that for the remainder, not as easy as it comes. Hopefully, Pittsburgh put that thing in the back burner, not really stressed, not really worried about it. And I feel like they may see Cleveland again. And I'll be honest with you, I feel like they could beat Cleveland on a Sunday, maybe not on a Thursday night. Cleveland's got other purposes. They're thinking about draft spots. They're thinking about how in the hell do we get out of this Deshaun Watson contract? What's going to happen with the head coach? They got more problems to have to deal with than just go ahead and get one against Pittsburgh. Make yourselves happy. Go ahead. But they got more problems ahead of them than just trying to double dip the Pittsburgh Steelers. As much as we want to see something like that happen, I just don't know. The second time around, it's tougher for me. All right, I thought this was interesting. So I'll get to the Daniel Jones stuff right after the break, because I think there's a little bit more to break down. So I was listening to this morning, and right now, the turmoil for the Jets is looking really bad with Aaron Rodgers and with Robert Saleh gone, Nate Hackett demoted, Joe Douglas fired. It's terrible. Well, I started listening to this, and I feel like I'm kind of open to this idea. I'm watching culture coaches out there, from the Jim Harbaughs, the Andy Reids, the Mike Tomlins in some areas, and I would also probably say, I know Dan Quinn, he's been a coach before, but everything's looked so brand new in Washington. But I would also say Sean McVay and a couple others. Well, this brought up a point that I think should be discussed about. And you know what? I'm not opposed to this idea. So, former Jets head coach, Rex Ryan, and you know how good he is on ESPN. He tells it as it is. He's a very likable guy. He's sent his resume to maybe potentially coach the Jets for a second time. There ain't anybody else outside of Mike Vrabel, I feel like, that could move this Jets organization probably better than Rex Ryan. Listen, I know most people would say, well, Rex Ryan did kind of decline later in his coaching career. Yeah, but you know what happened? Jets ownership has been terrible for years. Go back to the time when they had Mark Sanchez and they had Braylon Edwards. They had multiple other guys. Hell, they had a defense with Bart Scott and with multiple others there. It was fantastic. And they felt like they changed the culture. The team got as far as to the AFC Championship. And that's with Rex Ryan, who's not afraid to call somebody out, who's not afraid to tell it as it is, and I think serves as a catalyst in an organization like the Jets. Somebody who knows this organization from top to bottom. Somebody who's going to put the organization accountable when things go wrong. But I do feel like that if Rex Ryan was given a second chance to coaching the Jets, I wouldn't be mad at it. That's unless they don't get Mike Vrabel. But look, I look at these coaching staffs for next year. There is only 2 potential coaches. If Rex Ryan gets hired on, that's 3 that are culture-setting coaches. There's 3. The rest of them are coordinators. Okay, the 3 on the top of my mind is Mike Vrabel, Rex Ryan, and I would say, given a second chance in what he's doing right now in the Vikings defense, Brian Flores. I'll be honest with you. I'm going to tell it as it is. Brian Flores does deserve a second chance. And if you notice something, when Tua Tagovailoa called him out, thinking he was a horrible coach, thinking he was too tough, he talked down to you, don't you notice how happy Brian Flores is now? I think a part of it was it was a self-reflection time. Jim Harbaugh did this by the time that he was up, because he was a hard-nosed, nose-in-the-trench type coach when he was in Stanford and before he got to San Francisco. Once he left the Niners, there was a bit of that went on when he was at Michigan. But the later, and I would say the older he got, he started lightening up, started relating to these players, really started to invest in the coaching and shape the culture as it is. That's why the Chargers look so good as they are. They're a force did not be reckoned. Like they are on a 4-game win streak. They're playing Baltimore on Monday night. I feel like they've really changed and shaped the culture. He's only getting paid $16 million a year. And for what he's doing in the first year is money well spent. But that's the rule in life. When you spend that kind of money, you know what you're going to get. If you spend cheaper than that, you know what you're going to get too. It may not be the best premium result, but that's what happens. For the Jets, you got to tear this thing apart. And I think Rex Ryan coming back for a second time feels a lot like the guy who has been lingering on the outside, who knows this organization, understands the flaws this team has, and not to mention, like Chase and I have been talking about, you do not want to take that defense for granted. With Sauce and with Jermaine Johnson, with Michael Carter, you don't want to take that defense for granted. I feel like Rex Ryan could be the answer to only the Jets. I wouldn't see that with any other team, because then that means he's got to go through an entire reset. But if it's just the Jets, he's not asking for personnel control. He's not asking for, all this and that. All you got to give him is just the right personnel that works. That's all you got to do. Rex will do the rest. He will shape up the culture. He will hold every one of the players accountable when it comes to shaping to get the best out of every single one of them and make this team relevant again. The team hasn't been in the playoffs for a very long time. Neither have they even had a winning record for quite some time. I think it's time. I'm not opposed to it for the second time. Usually coaches that get this kind of opportunity, usually it's always the second time. They're actually a lot better. Pete Carroll, that was his 3rd shot in the NFL when he got to Seattle. And look at the history from there. 2 Super Bowls, winning one of them, and built a culture in Seattle. I mean, he was a culture guy. Usually, sometimes it's an average of the 2nd to 3rd year. like the third time that they do, is when the culture shaped. I'm not opposed to this. I think Rex Ryan, I feel like the Jets need Rex Ryan more than the other way around. And that's what Rex is pitching. He sees the dysfunction. He sees how Aaron Rodgers is acting and how he's dealing with all this. And he's like, you know what? I'm open to come back. I'm open to come back and help this team because they need it. I don't know about you, but I feel like that's some serious somebody that wants to step in and be a savior of this organization. I mean, it's such dysfunction. But Chase, here's the thing. Okay, it would have been a bad idea had Rex Ryan not got this team to the AFC Championship and have not built some kind of relevancy with this organization. But you know what? I like a coach who tells it as it is, who's not fazed by all this BS, that could actually make this team consistent. I mean, you see a lot of these culture coaches. I mean, when you get a culture-setting coach, it makes a huge difference. Look at what's happening. I mean, Woody Johnson's just sitting back there. Aaron Rodgers is prickly, and he's a grudge holder, and that's what got Saleh fired. That's what got Joe Douglas fired, and Nate Hackett's getting demoted. But I mean, there's too much going on, and I think Rex is seeing this from the outside looking in, and is just like, boy, could you imagine what I would do with this team?
I mean,
all this.
It's difficult to say because when's the last time we saw a coach get fired from the team that he coached and then like a few years later go back to that same team? We don't see it very often, but we're also
not very often.
No, we don't. And the thing is, like, Rex, like, I could understand if he was a very successful coach. He had 2 AFC Championship appearances in like a 2-year time frame, like, you know, within like, you know, 2 years of each other. Yeah. And he coached the Jets for like 7 or 8 years and had like mediocre seasons after that. And then he went to coach the Bills, coached them for like 2 to 3 seasons, and had 1 playoff appearance in that time. And then they fired him. And then he hasn't had any other coaching job since then. And like, I could understand if he had a lot of success, but like, he's not that successful of a head coach. I understand like the disciplinary side of things, but like you've got to factor in and weigh in. Like, okay, I had this guy in here for 7 years, and I didn't see much success for 7 years.
But
why would I bring him back?
But here's my only reason: is we know how this Jets organization runs. They make desperate moves. You know this. I mean, you've seen this with the Haslams several times. When an organization makes desperate moves, what always happens? It's a ripple effect. It ripples on the coach. It ripples on the quarterback. It ripples on all the personnel. That's what happens when you make an organizational desperate move, which is why Rex is basically saying, look, I'm not here to take control of the personnel. You guys can have whatever you want there up in the front office. Okay, that's your department. I just want to be able to get control of the players and lead them in the right direction, because I think he's looking at this from a standpoint as a defensive-minded coach. I got Sauce Gardner, I got Jermaine Johnson, I got Michael Carter, I got Quinnen Williams, I got a multitude of talented players on defense. The last thing I want to do, and because you saw how that defense looked without Robert Saleh, it didn't look the same. The last thing you want to do is you want to make this defense, the last thing you want to do is make them that bad where the defense is now taken for granted. I mean, DJ Reed is amongst one of the top corners in the league right now. That's why I'm like, I would be fine with him if he had total defensive control. But then that also means the right-hand man he has to hire as an offensive coordinator has to be the right guy.
Exactly.
And you know what? Maybe there might actually be a coach up in college that may end up being a coordinator. I don't know.
I mean we'll see.
Look,
it's
this is why I said before, because if there's one coach, I would not put him as a head coach right away. I don't think he's really built that kind of a track record of success that way to say, oh, I'm going to make you a head coach in the NFL. I don't think he's built that way. But I am not opposed to putting him as an offensive coordinator because I've seen what he's done with quarterbacks. I've seen how he's built an offense, and I've seen how creative that he can be with the playbook. You know exactly who I'm talking about. Lincoln Riley, USC. I think he would be the perfect offensive coordinator. I would not make him head coach right now because I'm seeing this stuff with USC. I mean, the fact that Julian Lewis is at Colorado right now, just tells you they are not recruiting a whole lot, especially with high talented weapons and a quarterback in the Southern California, in that portion of the state, which is pretty damn bad. When you got Oregon, you got Washington, you got the SEC, you got everybody in the Big Ten, literally scouting for skilled players in that region of California.
See, if Rex Ryan was to come back, there would be one guy that I would really trust him to get that has had a multitude of success in the NFL, has coached one guy in particular, and when he was there, he had some of the best seasons of his career so far in the NFL, and then went to another team and had that quarterback become, the league's leading passer for that season.
Right.
And the guy that I'm talking about is an offensive coordinator for UCLA right now, Eric Bieniemy. You bring him to the Jets, let him work with whatever quarterback that they get, let him run the offense. And because we've seen it when he was there with Patrick Mahomes, he had the 2 MVP seasons that Mahomes had. He led, the Chiefs to a top 5 offense for 3 or 4 years in a row. And he had Sam Howell looking really good in terms of passing with the Commanders and everything. So I think that is the one guy you should bring in. But to me, if I'm on the show, I'm looking at Rex Ryan and I'm looking him dead in the face and I'm going to say, you've coached in the NFL, didn't have much success. What makes you think you can do better this time around?
I mean, my thing is with Rex Ryan, and sometimes a lot of coaches go through this. I've watched Nick Saban. Nick Saban came to terms, I'm a legendary head coach in college. Okay, he's built that track record. Okay, that's fine. But he has gone to the NFL multiple times. He may not have built the success like we thought that he would have because he was so good up in college, but usually sometimes this is always the classic story. There are some college coaches that are out there that were meant to be college coaches. Some of them don't even pan out in the NFL. I feel like the outliers, though, remember, you go back to Pete Carroll. He coached twice, even coached with the Jets. And then by the time that he got fired, came back to USC, led them to multiple titles. And when the time was right, opening came out for Seattle, and he took that job, and he literally had to deal with a quarterback that they paid, Matt Flynn, and yet he was not built up to the standard that Pete Carroll was putting together because of a defensive mind. Yet this kid from Wisconsin, Russell Wilson, came in and literally became the outlier of the offense. That sets a lot of trust. That's why I think with Rex Ryan, I think what he's done is he's respectfully taken a step back. And usually a lot of coaches, they do this. They reflect upon it. I mean, look at what Bill Belichick's doing right now. Belichick's all around on the shows. He's taking a year off because we've known with what we've seen post-break. I think that's one of the things that I think hinders him. Because when he took too much control on the personnel, you saw what happened. Drafts started getting mediocre. He made Matt Patricia a DC and OC, and it wrecked Mac Jones. Those were so many questionable things. But I think because usually, I always say it like this. Sometimes in life, we desperately need a vacation in our lives. That's why we have paid time off. That's why we have those for a reason. Because we can't just expect to be at work every single day, not suffer a sick day, not be like, well, I'm good. I don't really need a mental break. No, eventually we all need to have that mental break. That's why we have those. Sometimes we take vacations and we self-reflect on that. Like if you took a week vacation and you self-reflected, do you not feel a certain type of way when you come back home after a vacation and you're just like, you know what? I know what we need to do. I know what I need to do here. I feel like that's what Rex Ryan's doing. He took so much time off that he self-reflected. He's learning about the league as he's watching it because we're all students of the game. We're learning this right now. And I feel like this is pivotal because only him, if he went anywhere else, I don't know if that would work. I feel like that would be a complete reset mode for him. But I feel like that he goes to the Jets. I feel like he knows what he needs to do. He's not asking for complete personnel control. He's not asking for that. He just wants to get these players in the right track. I'm not opposed to that. If I'm the Jets, you saw how much turmoil you've been dealing with. And Rex Ryan was your last coach to getting you into the playoffs. You couldn't do that with Todd Bowles. You couldn't do that with Robert Saleh. You couldn't even do that with they had Adam Gase. We all know how bad of a show that was. So that's why I'm saying it feels to me like he is the New York Jets saving grace because this is what New York needs.
I mean,
I'll talk about the other side because I'll tell you that because they got a coach. But look how better it will be if they actually get a quarterback and they get the offense right.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just like this is a what have you done for me lately type of league, and like I can bring back like all of the 7 years or 8 years, whatever it was that he was with the Jets. I would be very hesitant to bring him back because there are so many options at coach. That you can, or there's so many options out there that you can bring in at coach to coach this team. But for example, you got Ben Johnson, who is able to run an offense the way that he is in Detroit and everything. And if you've got your choice of whatever quarterback you for you, to get the guy that you want and run the offense that you want. So, I mean, getting a guy like
But can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
New York, I've been there 6 times. You are in a New York sports market. If you're Ben Johnson, I understand your successes in Detroit. But you are in the Big Apple, and you're in a big money market. Okay? These are the same people who literally have to watch Wall Street every single day on their televisions because they're scared about what the Dow Jones is going to literally look like tomorrow. You cannot afford to fail. And I'm sorry, as much of a soft spot I have for Ben Johnson, I don't think he's ready to take on that kind of beast, respectfully. I don't think there is a multitude of things that has to be fixed. You're dealing with an owner who's that desperate. Like he's the one who sold on this Aaron Rodgers deal. Okay, he's the one who made the move. Unfortunately, Joe Douglas was the middleman. Okay, they didn't want this. I mean, you just saw what this team looked like. Without Aaron Rodgers, it looked like a college sideline out there, didn't it? Yeah. Did it not? That's why I'm like, you're brought in the wrong guy for this. And he's clearly not. Like, we talk about it of what have you done for me lately? What has Aaron Rodgers done in the last 2 years? He has become a shell of himself. And he's regressed. And that's why I think you need to do what you need to do. Get that out of here. Like, they need to restart at quarterback. I think what they also need to do, because the one thing I look at, I'll rate me this. Because Rex Ryan is my second option. That's why I put him at 2. I feel like my first option, a guy who's clearly capable of handling this, and he's in the same division here as his former team he played for, would be Mike Vrabel. Because he's dealt with this. And he's a very strong, he tells it as it is. Did you know that when he got fired, right? Do you remember in the news press that somebody in there, that the reason of it was because he was too intimidating? That's screaming a lot of volumes for other teams that like that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to compartmentalize this stuff because I'm sitting here thinking like the options that you got guys like Vance Joseph, who had a chance once with the Broncos and everything, and I think that with the way that his defense has been stepping up with the Broncos and everything, I think he could get a shot. I think Brian Flores, he had 2 winning seasons before he got fired with the Dolphins. You've got a guy like Todd Monken, who's been around in the NFL for quite some time, bounced back and forth between college and the NFL. You got like so many offensive minds in this league, Liam Cohen, Frank Smith, and then you got a young guy who I think, maybe give him one more year in the NFL to, test the waters and see what he can do. But Jesse Minter, I brought him up with the way that he's got the Chargers defense straightened out. He's a hard-nosed guy, a physical person, and he likes to, get up in your face and make sure you're doing things right. Why not let him go coach the Jets?
So I do agree with that. And I think a lot of that, because I think there's a part in it, the NFL. What's hard about this is because who's the one person that I look at because of this whole movement? Sean McVay. McVay's what started this whole thing. That's why you're seeing so many of these coaches who come in. But the difference about McVay is that McVay is clever on offense. He's stayed current to the whole thing. And he's also hired the right-hand man next to him to be as the DC. And he worked with guys. He worked with guys along with Zach Robinson. I mean, I know right now in Atlanta it doesn't look like that, but I give it some time. Guys that come off of Sean McVay's tree. I mean, Zach Taylor, by the way.
Matt LaFleur.
And Matt LaFleur. Yeah, LaFleur, when they were all on the same coaching tree in Washington at the time with him and Kyle Shanahan, those guys.
And you got Kevin O'Connell as well. Raheem Morris,
Zach Robinson. Oh yeah, the list goes on. But my point is that as much as I like with these offensive coaches, okay, I do believe they're very clever. I do feel like that they need another shot. But here's my problem. Look, Todd Monken, I feel like you got to run another year with this. I'm watching Baltimore's offense, okay? It's nothing against it, but I'm watching Baltimore's offense. And the same way I'm watching Bobby Slowick's offense at Houston. You got to give it another year because sometimes there are those missing pieces that they may not have touched upon. It's a different atmosphere when you're there. It makes a lot of things simple without the right defensive coordinator, but you're right. I feel like Brian Flores deserves another shot as a head coach. I agree with that. As far as Vance Joseph, let me be honest with you. I live here in Denver. I feel like he is so loyal to this Broncos organization. Like he was a coach once here. Okay. Yeah. And when he got into DC, I feel like I don't think he wants to leave that culture. I'll be honest with you. I don't even think he wants to leave it. I think because because I think personally, I think he's built now the reputation of, sure, I didn't work as a head coach, but I see with what I'm doing as a DC, and I love living here in Denver, right? Like there are some people that actually do like where they live in. So it'd be nearly impossible. It'd be very hard to move them out of somewhere they're very comfortable in. So that's why I'm like, I think with Vance Joseph, I would not be surprised if he stayed put in Denver because you know what? He's put together a very good defense. They're only going to get better. And I think he just loves the culture there. So my point is that I think Vrabel, Brian Flores, you know what's funny about this? I feel like the one outlier that right now he's coaching in Tampa, but when he was in this spot with the Jets, Todd Bowles, what happened? The organization problems. I mean, Todd Bowles was a hell of a coach. Okay, and he deserved that second chance by the time that he got up into Tampa. And right now his saving grace is Baker Mayfield. Because sometimes when you have a quarterback that you have that much trust in, and that's why I like Buccaneers this weekend. You're getting Mike Evans back. Baker Mayfield will look much, much better. Don't be confused by what your eyes show you because of the lack of the talent. I mean, they went toe-to-toe with Kansas City, with Kate Otten. I mean, that's why I'm like, there's something there. But
yeah. I mean, are you going to the Denver game next week with the Browns?
Potentially. My wife and I have been talking about that. We may potentially be going to that one. We do have a friend of ours that's a season ticket holder. We might be going to that one. Yeah, because I like being there. And everybody in Denver loves the show, by the way. We have a lot of fans out there in Denver that love the show. But my point is, real quick before we go to break, but rate me this, okay? If Vrabel doesn't take this job, which I feel like he should, but I won't be surprised if he doesn't. Rex Ryan, head coach. Ed Dodds, the assistant GM for the Colts, because I've heard a lot of very good things. And I thought he was going to end up getting a job last year when the GM openings were there, because
I thought so too.
I know the Chargers opened up a spot for him when they went and took Joe Ortiz. They got a stronger culture now with that. But I felt like he would have been a very good candidate. And I think this year is his year where he will get into a spot, because the last thing you want to do, and Joe Douglas wasn't an idiot. Like, you saw the trade that he made for the Seattle Seahawks to ship off Jamal Adams. That's what accounted for Elijah Vera Tucker, and then all the other drafts: Breece Hall, Michael Carter, Jermaine Johnson, Garrett Wilson, Braylon Allen, all those picks. Just because he whiffed on a quarterback doesn't mean it's the end of the world. 65% of teams in this league all miss on a quarterback. They go draft another one. Okay, they just do that. But I feel like Ed Dodds, Rex Ryan, and I feel like if the opportunity presented itself, but I'm on the fence with you with the Eric Bieniemy thing. Absolutely. I would love that, because here's the other thing. Former running back. I got a two-headed monster in Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. I could shape that running back room. But I feel like Lincoln Riley could work with this, because I just think USC, I don't know, man.
Or Ryan Day has an OC as well.
Could.
I think he'd be a better OC than what he would be a head coach.
Yeah. I mean, I could kind of see that. I don't know. I think a part of my reservation is I'm just seeing him right now. I mean, look, he's on the tightropes here tomorrow.
He's not calling plays though, so it's Chip Kelly.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, you know, he's on the tightropes from here. I know it's Chip Kelly calling the plays, but I mean, you cannot afford to lose Indiana this weekend.
Or Michigan next week.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. We got a good episode here tonight. But listen, everybody that I've talked to, and especially for all of my fans that I always encourage because yes, I may potentially be back up in Mile High, potentially for next weekend. With the best prices, the best seats in the house, to give me the best experience while I'm there, and that is my great partners at SeatGeek. We have been rolling with this thing. I think we're coming up close to a year now, maybe more. But SeatGeek, I've trusted for a long time. I literally have the app on my phone. I'm serious. I have it on my phone. I never go without it with SeatGeek. SeatGeek has the best prices and the best seats in the house for whatever your interests are. Your favorite sporting team. I mean, Chase could go into a Cleveland Brown game without having to feel the strain of his pockets because they give him the best deals. He can go and see a Brown game right from there. Boom, done. You can go to your favorite concert venue and watch your favorite artist. By the way, ain't 3 Days Grace back, man? Like, I would love, after I saw this single today get launched, Adam Gontier is back. I want to go see a 3 Days Grace concert now. You can go see them at your favorite venue, wherever you choose to go. Or your favorite comedy shows or so much more. SeatGeek has it all just for you by going online to SeatGeek.com. Download the mobile app on your mobile device, Google Play, in the App Store. But please, when you do at checkout, use the promo code SNAKESPORTS as a free gift. $20 off of your first purchase of your first ticket. As a way, it's a thank you for using SeatGeek. That's SeatGeek.com. Don't lose your seat with SeatGeek.
Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts that get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Check out the Con Man live on the Sports Corner, coming to a screen near you, giving you the greatest stories from basketball legends you've never seen before. Sharing their glory, building the toughness, and how they show off their swag. But only one man knows all that, and that's the Con Man. Join Michael Conceição, the Con Man, at the Sports Corner, Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
All this talk about New York sports, back here with you on the Snake Sports Talk Show. So the reports were out earlier today. So the New York Giants admit they made a mistake, and they did. And what happened today is quarterback Daniel Jones, because he was going onto the fourth depth chart of the quarterback room, requested he'd be released, and they granted his release. So the Giants now have released Daniel Jones, a $20 million cap hit, and then eventually becomes a $40 million cap hit. You do realize, look, this is what it is in New York sports. And Chase and I have been talking about this from the other side with the Jets. The Giants in the last few years, okay, they've had 10-year changes in coaches since Tom Coughlin retired, or when he went into Jacksonville as a part of their operations. Okay, they hadn't been the same team since. It had been 10 years since they last went into the playoffs. That wasn't until Brian Daboll came in and really shaped up this offense. But they had your Ben McAdoo's, your Pat Shurmurs, and your Joe Judges. None of those were moving the needle. None of them. And by the way, Saquon Barkley, how's he doing in Philly? Yeah. Saquon Barkley, you had arguably one of the most talented running backs in your offense. I know he was suffering through injuries and all the rest of it, but doesn't every running back deal with that? It's not easy. I'm watching J.K. Dobbins with a torn ACL and LCL and a torn Achilles, and he's literally scoring in the end zone now. The Chargers took a chance at $1.6 million. Every running back in this league goes through wear and tear. Okay. One thing about the Giants, they've made terrible business moves. They've also made terrible head coaching hires until they got Brian Daboll. Once Daboll came in, he shaped the offense. Had a quarterback that they've been trying to, to sell you on, like, oh, he's the future, he's good. Yeah, 6 years later, we all know what Daniel Jones is. Daniel Jones is more of a high-quality backup than he is as a starter. I have never seen a quarterback from Duke be that successful. And by the way, did you know that Daniel Jones in high school, you know how many starts he had in high school? 0. If you are a quarterback who doesn't have a whole lot of starts in high school, chances are, what makes you think you'll succeed in the NFL? I'm sorry, I know I think this harshly that for high school students, but listen, I don't come off of it as like you're never going to make it into the NFL. All I'm saying is that whatever your mechanics are or whatever that that you have a flaw in, go fix it. Get intense training. Get whatever you need to. Okay, that's where a lot of those college offers are going to come up to. Those are your Oregons. Those are your Bamas. Those are your Georgias. Those are a lot of your powerhouse programs right there. Even Texas. Okay, there's even quarterbacks that go elsewhere, like an LSU or a South Carolina, or even anywhere else in the country, and even they get built into this. So Daniel Jones, where he came from at Duke, was a basketball program. I have not seen a quarterback out of Duke be this successful. The only outlier that I feel like could be on that is Riley Leonard, who transferred to Notre Dame. He realized exactly what the talents were in Duke. But we knew with who Daniel Jones was. Daniel Jones was not that creative. He wasn't that kind of game manager for the Giants. Okay. Realistically, all this stuff was from Brian Daboll. He got Saquon Barkley to be in the healthiest he's ever been in his career. Okay. Ran that offense where it was a balance of 60-40 run pass. And then what happened? They paid Daniel Jones over Saquon Barkley, where Saquon now is dominating in Philadelphia. Penn State kid. They knew the offensive line was horrible. They knew they couldn't do anything with that. But this is what it is. I mean, are you going to tell me that you see something there with Daniel Jones? Look, I'll be honest with you. There have been quarterbacks who have had saving grace stories. Look at Baker Mayfield. I mean, he went into Cleveland, was a highly prospected quarterback out of Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley's tree, who won the Heisman, right? But then goes to Carolina after Cleveland's dysfunctions, who apparently seem to continue, and then doesn't succeed that well, then goes and learns from Sean McVay. And now look at how he's thriving in Tampa. I'm just saying those roads are very real. They are very real. And not to mention, too, look at Sam Darnold. I know a lot of people are not highly sold on Sam Darnold, but almost the same thing. Dysfunction with the Jets, goes to Carolina, doesn't play that well. Then ends up going to San Francisco, learns from Kyle Shanahan, a very smart offensive mind. Then goes to Minnesota. And look at the wonders that's happening with the Vikings. However, regardless you think about with Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield, I think Daniel Jones could be in that spot where there could be a saving grace moment. I don't know. There might be. But you know what's funny is, and most people thought about this, what if the Rams inquired about Daniel Jones? Listen, offensive coaches like Sean McVay, who's been doing this thing for a long time, I've watched it, and it's real. Jared Goff, Matt Stafford, Baker Mayfield. The quarterback thing is so real. I think for the saving grace for the Rams, because with Daniel Jones cut, the Giants are paying that money, not the Rams. You can maybe go and bring in Daniel Jones, get him familiarized with Sean McVay, because Matt Stafford's not getting any younger. He's had so many multitudes of injuries, and he's only going to get older from here. But I feel like the saving grace story is so real that I feel like Daniel Jones and Sean McVay, think about it. All I can say. I think there is a point I think there is somewhere a spot for him there. But New York just kind of took him, ripped him apart, and devoured him. Not a good market either. That's what New York does to you. I mean, they are very highly, they have such high expectations for the Mets, for the Yankees, for the Giants, for the Jets, the Nets, the Knicks, the Islanders, the Rangers. I got family that live there. I cannot begin to tell you how many times my grandfather, when I would talk with him, how pissed off of he would be for what the Giants did. That was every time. But that's the world they lived in. Chase with the news.
This is the hot press.
Look, I think Sean McVay's quarterback whispering magic is very real. And you know what? I think Daniel Jones, because you're barely paying him anything, the Giants are paying most of his contract because it's a $20 million hit. And then there's the $40 million afterwards. And I think that's it. So I'm not opposed to that idea. I watched it with Baker Mayfield. I've watched it with Jared Goff. I mean, Goff was a pure pocket thrower. Okay, he barely moves. That's why, like, in his scenario and situation, I think what drove Sean McVay nuts is because he couldn't extend a lot of the plays like what Matt Stafford could. Because Jared Goff, if you gave him a perfect pocket, damn, he's such a good quarterback. But when his offensive line takes a hit, it's very different. So I think Sean McVay might get the best out of Daniel Jones. And look, I've never met a quarterback with that kind of success out of Duke. I never did. And isn't that crazy? I didn't believe it myself until I saw the post about it. 0 starts in high school. Like, holy cow. Insane. Oh my God. How did he even, well, I shouldn't say how to, because I do believe there's walk-ons. I know how that works. But yeah, he wasn't even the top recruited quarterback in high school. That just tells.
And the fact that it was Duke, like that tells you a lot.
A basketball program, like, you know what I mean? It's like, look, the only outlier that I feel like could have success in the NFL, but he transferred to Notre Dame, would be Riley Leonard. That would be the only quarterback I know that I think could have that kind of solid success.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's going to be interesting to see if Sean McVay or somebody can get a hold of him, because, you know, pairing him with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams would be, you know, interesting to say the least and everything. But let's stay on the topic of quarterbacks while we get into it.
Yeah.
We have seen that Miller Moss decommitted from USC and went to Michigan.
Man.
And the fact that they signed Miller Moss, they just now got the #1 quarterback recruit to decommit from LSU to come to Michigan in Bryce Underwood. And with that Bryce Underwood effect, not only have we seen people like a quarterback decommit, we've seen a number 2 ranked wide receiver decommit. That was committed to LSU to go play for Michigan. We've seen one of the better defensive tackles and edge rushers decommit from their respective schools to come to Michigan because of the Bryce Underwood signing. And it was told that it was a $12 million offer of NIL money that LSU offered Michigan. And I think that LSU should come back with a counteroffer of $15 million to get him away from Michigan, because we do not need Bryce Underwood in Michigan.
So I will tell you this. Okay, we saw, and I've said this on the program, that Michigan would be taking a slight step back because they don't have the juice in Jim Harbaugh. I like Sharon more. I think he's done such great services, and I was happy he got the head coaching job because of what he's done when Harbaugh was away. But we knew that defense, it would be a defensive program. It has been. They've had such good defensive players. Aiden Hutchinson, we're watching Will Johnson, we're watching a bunch of other very good kids on the defensive side of the ball. They just can't figure out quarterback. They haven't been. My takeaway is I don't think they've ever have been, but I've known that they've always been a ground and pound program. Donovan Edwards, and I'm sure they probably will get another running back somewhere in there, but that's what Michigan's been out to be. They just never had that dynamic quarterback. But I think this is a good thing, though, for Michigan in their future, because that means you're going to start off with Miller Moss on this one. And look, I like Miller Moss. I really, really do. But I do believe there's some mechanics he does have to fix up, because I see him, he's a bit stiff. Because when I watched him when Caleb Williams was going into the draft and he played in that bowl game, it was one thing if you got a quarterback who throws for 3 tutties and then 2 picks, right, in college. He threw for 6 and only got picked off 1 time. Like, there was something there with Miller Moss. Something there.
Yeah.
Maybe a change of scenery and going into Michigan, a very strong, tough culture. He might actually find something in there, but he's got to fix up that mechanic. But Bryce Underwood, let me tell you, Michigan's not going away that easily.
What a blow to Brian Kelly.
I know, but here's the thing. I'm starting to kind of realize, I think Brian Kelly, I think LSU's kind of burnt them out. Because look,
I don't know. I mean,
he wasn't because Notre Dame, because Notre Dame is an independent conference, right? As an independent program, you have your hands on everything. And we see in a lot of the successes, but then when you go to the SEC, it is a different kind of beast. Because you're dealing with Kirby Smarts, you're dealing with now you're Kalen DeBoers. You were once dealing with the Nick Sabans of the world. You're also dealing with South Carolina. You're dealing with Tennessee. I mean, you're dealing with all these other programs in the SEC. That's not easy. I mean, look, they did last year have the successes, but I just think Jaden Daniels was so talented. I mean, we saw this from Arizona State, and then goes up in there. He's got Malik Neighbors. He's got Brian Thomas. Like, the offense was so dynamic. But that's been LSU, though, for a long time. But from the cultural standpoint, I don't know. I maybe I could be wrong, but I just feel like I know by what I see from the body language. I just don't know. I think it might have caught up to Brian Kelly.
Speaking of coaches that deserve another chance, and I'll reiterate something and then I'll move on. Ed Orgeron deserves a second chance at getting a head coaching job because of his success that he had at LSU. But in terms of Brian Kelly, we have seen him have the success when he's got the firepower to work with. And that's why he went out to try to get Bryce Underwood, being the number 1 quarterback in the recruitment class, and be able to come in along with the number 2 wide receiver in the whole nation, bringing him in there. It would be like a Malik Neighbors and Jaden Daniels situation. But now that you've lost those 2 and everything, because we knew that Nussmeier was not anywhere near the level of Jaden Daniels.
Hell, not even anywhere of the level of Joe Burrow.
And
Like-
you know, being able to bring in a quarterback of your choosing, and especially the number one in the recruitment class and everything, that was what was going to put Brian Kelly back in the win column in terms of maybe having one loss on next year's record and everything. But now, if he returns, you're going to have to run another year back with Garrett Nussmeier, because now you've lost out on Bryce Underwood, and Ohio State got the number 2 quarterback in Tevin St. Clair.
Yep.
So now you lost out on the chance for the top 2 quarterbacks in this class. However, leads me to my next piece of news that would be good news for Brian Kelly if this happens. Air Nolan, the former number 1 quarterback recruit coming out of, I believe, the 2023 recruitment class, is thinking about entering the transfer portal. And he is a freshman this year. And at least I think he is, because I was having an argument with somebody saying that he was a freshman. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure he was a freshman last year. He's a sophomore this year. But if he enters the transfer portal, that gives Brian Kelly a chance to get a dual threat quarterback with a very strong, very accurate arm, and then you could build it from there.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. So of the many places that we've seen that have quarterbacks now. So Julian Lewis now had decommitted from USC to now go to Colorado.
Yes, sir.
So that just told you that this just summed it up. Deion Sanders not going to the NFL. Okay, when you get a 5-star quarterback like that, like, he's there to go and teach the kids. That's what it is. And I think Julian Lewis, the kid has potential there. But I think Bryce Underwood being there up in Michigan really does give them at least a very interesting, and I would say potentially a clever offense. But no, I mean, here's my thing, is that when I looked at LSU, I mean, they've had a mix of quarterbacks and wide receivers. I mean, they next to Bama and Ohio State, such good wide receiving trios of programs. Okay, if you're a wide receiver, those are your 3 big prime programs to go to: Bama, Ohio State, and LSU. There's no doubt about that. But we've seen these teams at LSU. I mean, I've seen them with Zach Mettenberger. I've seen them with Joe Burrow. I've seen them now with Garrett Nussmeier and Jaden Daniels. I mean, LSU, as long as you have the quarterback to distribute to those weapons, because ultimately these weapons, as long as they get the receptions and they get the stats, they will become very good high prospects. So I think that's what's important. Now, Garrett Nussmeier, I don't think is terrible, in my opinion. I just think there was a part in him that I know that he can distribute weapons. He's not a Jaden Daniels or a Joe Burrow, but he's good enough to distribute to these weapons. So I think that's what you really have to kind of start from. Now, they are losing their tackle, Will Campbell. I think he's very, very good.
And Omari Jones, too. They might lose him as well.
That's right. So my thing is, and can I make this kind of statement from here with Ed Orgeron? Even though as much as I like the guy, he had Joe Brady as an offensive coordinator. Very smart. He also had a very good defensive coordinator in LSU. You saw how that team, from Joe Burrow when they won the Natty, compared to the team the year after they won the Natty. And you just saw Ed Orgeron. I don't really know that he's had all of that effect as far as building the culture in the program. Because here's the thing. You got to, like, I'll be honest with you, Les Miles, for as long as he's been there at LSU, he wasn't a culture setter. He was just there because he had a bunch of talented guys that were coming up out of it. Leonard Fournette, he had several other talented position players that you know that he was building up, but he was not a culture setter. Like, I have a guy who covers the LSU Tigers, And we talked about this, and he was like, yeah, Les Miles is not a culture guy. Like that was just how it was. And I'm like, that's interesting. But after he broke it down to me, I was like, okay, that actually makes sense. Because again, it's people don't realize how very difficult that this is to build a culture. Nick Saban's been doing that for years with Alabama. Hell, even when he was up at LSU. And then you watch the Kirby Smarts of the world in Georgia. Dan Lanning, by the way, in Oregon, he is slowly cooking and building a culture in Eugene. He's not going to leave for the NFL. These people who keep thinking that he is, no, he's not. He hasn't won a natty there. That is his goal. Because all of this has always, because it's Phil Knight money. That's what it's always been with Oregon. But he's trying to build a culture to where they win a natty. It's not so much of, well, we just get brand new unis every year. And Phil Knight, the owner of Nike, like he's gonna serve us up well. That's not turning into titles. But that's why you get Dan Lanning. That's why you get a culture center. So I mean, I don't know. I think LSU, that's going to be really interesting because as much as I love Brian Kelly, I just think that, I mean, I'm watching this with Lincoln Riley. How many people thought that USC would be back to its relevance again? There's still a problem there in USC. I feel like it's recruiting. I feel like it might be the AD. I feel like it has to be something in there. Because I think it's crazy. But here's the funny thing. Pete Carroll is teaching in USC. I'm surprised Lincoln Riley hasn't even just itched him out of the classroom and just say, look, just mentor me. How do I do this? How do I honestly build a culture with a program that you've been so dominant in when they were the Pac-10? Like, yeah. And those guys have all the answers.
It's insane when you think about it, because the fact that you had Miller Moss transfer to decommit transfer to Michigan, and now you have Julian Lewis decommit from USC going to Colorado, along with the number 2 edge rusher of this recruitment class going to Colorado as well, shows a lot that Colorado is starting to bring in these players and starting to bring in the talent that really wants to be there.
The culture is very strong in Boulder, I'm telling you. I think what Dion is doing, look, I know the NFL's so sweet. You get days off, okay? And you're always playing on a Sunday or a Monday or a Thursday. I get all that. But, I mean, look at those organizations. Do you really think that I would want to coach either of them? You think I'm going to do you think I'm going to have better sleep at night with Jerry Jones literally showing off his pettiness on radio in Dallas? No. Do you think I'm honestly going to deal with the Johnson family in New York with the turmoil, the turbulence that the Jets have been dealing with? Hell no. Like, if
the Bears are a good option.
Oh, yeah. But here's the thing. All I'm saying is, and what people are kind of missing the ball on, is that this is the first year post Nick Saban. It's anybody's game. That's why I'm like, why would you want to leave college right now? I get it. It's tiring. It's every day. I get that part. I would rather take – Jim Harbaugh knew when he took that job with the Chargers, but the difference of it is at least because in Michigan, they were going to punish him either way, right? He would have never have even seen the field, coached those kids, and the Big Ten wasn't even willing to defend him. And yet he gave him a natty. He did exactly his due diligences at his alma mater. But by the time that he would have came back, you're going to suspend him. He's not going to see the lick of the field. Not even going to coach these kids. You know what he did? He said, all right, I like the NFL anyway. I'm getting paid $16 million a year, and I got days off. Y'all can go screw yourselves.
And the Chargers are 7-4, so about to be 8-4.
About to be 7-3, about to be 8-3. Oh yeah. See what I mean? It's like sometimes when you get that kind of perfect harmony like that, it just makes it so good. But I just think right now, Dion, the culture's bright in Colorado. I don't see him tearing that apart. And by the way, Warren Sapp, man, that guy has really changed up that D line. That defensive front, and with them getting that edge rusher, boy, that's gonna be fun to watch for the next few years in the Big 12.
Yep.
They underestimate them. All right, Chase Swift and the Goose. Man,
This is the Hot Press.
I'll tell you, good week, man. It was a great week with the show. It's only going to get better from here. Now, we may have some special news. I'll be talking off the air about it. But what I want to do beforehand, I know I talked about this in the previous episode, but I'm just staring at these top 10 picks right now in the NFL. And as it stands right now, with Jacksonville, Tennessee, Cleveland Giants, Raiders, Patriots, Jets, Panthers, Dallas, and New Orleans.
Cleveland is now at 7 after last night's win.
Yeah, so that's what changed up. Now, out of those teams, Giants, Raiders, Jets, Browns, those teams should be looking at quarterback. You know that without a doubt. And the quarterback class is not that big, which is unfortunate. That's why you fight to go and get the first 2 of those quarterbacks. Maybe the outlier, Jalen Milroe, potentially. Because with Quinn Ewers, I like the kid, but there's an injury history. I don't know if that might actually redefine himself in the NFL. There's also Jackson Dart. As long as he goes into the right situation, I think he will very much be productive. But
I think so too.
But I think with these teams from here that need the quarterback, I think because, again, I think Shedeur Sanders, I feel like his saving grace would be the Las Vegas Raiders because they'll have the most cap space. They will certainly be spending that money. They need to go and get more O-linemen. They hit with Jackson Powers Johnson, and they have Colton Miller. They have at least 2. They can go get a couple more. They also have some weapons, but they're not afraid to go and get another one. And they can now work on depth. That's why I think the Raiders is the prime spot if I'm Shedeur Sanders. Because at least that money's going to be put to good use. And they're going to get a new offensive coordinator, which is going to be important. I don't see them firing Antonio Pierce because of how much Raider fans vouched for him to be the head coach.
And players.
Yes, and I just think that this, unfortunately, this year was a dud. And you saw everything. You saw a whole writing on the wall with this thing. So I think you take a reset, you get yourself back into where you need to be, and I think the Raiders will be just fine. I think they'll be okay in that area. But when I look at Travis Hunter, I mean, this is why that I think a lot of places from here with Travis Hunter, I mean, Jacksonville right now looks to be a pretty good candidate spot. But, because they got Tavon Campbell, and then he'll be the other corner. But the problem of it is there's just a multitude of things going wrong with Jacksonville. They need more help. So I feel like is Travis Hunter really going to be that be-all, end-all answer? And I don't know. Doug Peterson's going to get fired. They're going to have a new offensive playbook. But I feel like that if anything else, I feel like the best projected spot would be New England. And the reason for that is because he's now paired with a young kid, Christian Gonzalez, who I think is very, very underrated. And a kid that's a very good man-to-man cover. Now, the other thing is you now have Travis Hunter as a corner. You've got 2 shutdown corners there on one side and the other. The other thing is, like the Raiders, the Patriots have a lot of the money to spend. They're the number 1 cap space spending team in the NFL. The number 1. They could go get offensive players. They can shape up their O-line. They could go get depth at defense. At least with Travis Hunter, the saving grace for the Patriots is that they do have a franchise quarterback. His name's Drake May. That's what makes all the sense in the world for New England.
Travis wants to play as a 2-way player. He's already confirmed that he wants to. So
yeah. So and here's the thing: you go and put him in New England. That's a perfect gadget guy spot.
Yeah.
I don't see how else you could even think about that. But I think Carolina has a different need. I think Bryce Young, I think he's going to stay there because there's something there. Now, they are playing the Chiefs, and they are off a 2-game win streak off a bye. So who knows how Bryce Young, if he's still feeling it. I think he might. My problem with Dallas, I've been talking to some people about this. One suggested the Cowboys trade back into the teens and acquire more draft capital and maybe potentially, because if I'm picturing this right, somewhere in there tells me Micah could get traded. And you know what? I'm okay with that. For a prime defensive draft, as in this draft here, I can go get another edge rusher. By the way, their linebackers, I didn't think they had any, but their linebackers are actually pretty good. Overshown, really good linebacker. And all they need is a defensive front because their run defense is so bad. And then at the same time, they can go get an edge rusher. You know what I mean? I think that would be my one prime thing to do if I'm the Cowboys. But certainly got to get a running back. And by the way, if Ashton Jeanty, if his draft stock ends up in the teens, and depending on it with these drafts, if Dallas actually has another draft pick, at least in the high premium, then you go get him because you need a run game. So that's why I'm like, if the opportunity presents itself, I think the Cowboys could do it. And then New Orleans, of course, they're going to go with defense.
And this is the first draft in, like, I think the past 10 to 15 years that every first-round team has had their own pick, and there's been no double picks.
That's right. Because, well, here's what's funny. We haven't seen 3 picks since Miami. Remember when they got that trade and they had the 3 first-round picks? I mean, that was pretty crazy.
Well, Houston had 3 first-round picks.
Actually, here's the other thing, too. I think the Raiders also had 3 first-round picks.
No, they got 2 from the Khalil Mack trade.
Because I know they got Cleveland Farrell, they got Josh Jacobs, and then I know they got one other player there, too, on that.
It was Cleveland Farrell. Then they ended up getting Jonathan Abrams and Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, those 3 from there. I do remember that. But my point is that those still exist, right? So a bunch of those premiums, they do exist. So it just depends. I feel like for a lot of those teams, when we actually get the set top 10, then we're going to see in the offseason what other moves that may be made if they're trying to acquire more draft capital and they're trying to open up cap space. Because you will
trade for the number 1 pick, because we saw 2 years ago when the Bears during the offseason traded the number 1 pick to the Panthers, 2-3 months before the draft.
That's what accounted Caleb Williams, Roma Dunze, and all that. Yes, that's what happened. I mean, that's when Carolina got Bryce Young. But the funny thing of it is, I mean, I'm seeing the San Francisco 49ers. When they traded that many picks to go and draft Trey Lance at 3, look what happened with them. I mean, they lost a lot of draft capital. So that's why I'm like, these things do exist for all these teams. So my thing is, because after letting go of Daniel Jones, the Giants know they have a multitude of needs. Offensive line, I think they need to get some help on corners because their secondaries outside of that pass rush is not really shutting things down. So I think getting an offensive line, because look, Evan Neal, good God. Once Andrew Thomas went down, I was like, yeah, this is bad. This offensive line, you wonder why Saquon Barkley had such a hard time there. So I think that if you shape up that offensive line, give them a better run game. Listen, Tracy looks pretty good. So I'm not gonna. Yeah, I like that kid. I think there's something there with him.
And
So
what you said earlier about Ed Dodds, now don't be shocked if he stays with the Colts because Chris Ballard might get fired from what I'm hearing because of the mistakes that he's made and like not hitting on a lot of picks over the past couple of years or spending a lot of money in free agency to get players in there. So, the Colts might fire him. If the Browns decide to fire Andrew Berry and keep Kevin Stefanski, he could go to Cleveland.
Yeah.
Ed Dodds could. So like he's a hot commodity in terms of the GMs, and so is the Chargers assistant GM. He's also been linked to a lot of teams as well.
So what's funny about that with Chris Ballard, because I was there with you a while back because I felt like once Andrew Luck retired, that was the whole rippling effect. They have not been able to hit a quarterback. But, however, I am going to see Anthony Richardson this weekend play the Lions. And I took the Colts at +9 because I do not believe – I did. And the reason of this is because, look, let me be honest with you. The NFL is not that easy of a cakewalk. You don't just go in – dominate and just put up 50 burgers every single week to teams. That's why I think this week they're going to slow it down. They will still win, but I don't think, especially with the way Anthony Richardson, by the way, did you watch that Jets game? He looked a lot better. So something tells me.
But it's the New York Jets.
It is, but you know what? I'm a glass half full guy. Something tells me that when you get benched and you come back up, sometimes it does change quarterbacks. It maybe motivates them, makes them feel confident. So I think in this one, I think the Lions will win this game, but I don't think they're going to be in a position to steamroll again. I just don't see it happening against the Colts. The Colts have such a good pass rush in Latu. They have pretty good defensive guys. I don't think it's going to be that.
Their secondary is bad. Their secondary is really bad.
It is, but I do believe as long as they can provide pressure and literally make that pocket uncomfortable for Jared Goff, it could be. I mean, they're going to have to rely on their Sonic and Knuckles there at running back. So, I'm just saying, I don't think it's just going to be a dog walk. I think they're going to get pulled back a bit.
I mean, back to the whole Ballard thing, but you look at the picks that he's had ever since the Andrew Luck times, and he hasn't really signed any free agents except for DeForest Buckner was the only big name one that he's actually brought to the roster.
I think my problem is that that's where I kind of look at Jim Irsay, because remember, Jim Irsay loves his cars, right? So anytime that he's got his car shows and all the rest of it, the Barrett Jackson thing, right? He's big on that. And so, but the Colts, though, and it's funny because I think it's just the Indiana culture as a whole, because I even see this now. Well, no, I take that back because I did see finally that I'm seeing some sort of identity with the Pacers, because I didn't see that for quite a while. And now I finally get an idea of what they are. Tyrese Halliburton, Pascal Siakam, they get a bunch of these other players. They play with speed. But the Colts, though, yes, they have had some of free agent woes, but I think some of that is just kind of the clash with the owner.
I don't really think so, just because Ryan Grigson spent a lot of money to get a lot of free agents in here, but Ballard didn't do enough because he said that he'd like to build in the draft and build a lot of the guys instead of bringing some free agents in. Now, however, you got to have a good mixture of both, and he hasn't been able to do that because if you look at the past 5 to 6 drafts that he's had, he's only hit on a total of 5 guys that I can actually think of.
Yes,
Jonathan Taylor. He hit on Darius Leonard when he was there, and he was actually healthy. He ended up hitting on Quentin Nelson. He had Kenny Moore, the corner. He's been pretty good. And then the last guy that I can think of that has been pretty good, or at least starting to be pretty good, is Latu. And those are the only guys that I can think of that he's drafted that has made a big impact on this team.
Now, I will say Kwity Paye, when he came out of Michigan, I I didn't think he'd be super impactful, but I certainly did believe he was serviceable. Now, the other thing is like, because I know what Michael Pittman Jr. is. I mean, in the Colts, he's a 1. But if he went to any other offensive system, I think he'd easily be a very good 2.
He would.
But when I look at that, I mean, I watched that I'll tell you what, Josh Downs, by the way, I'm glad that they were at least able to get a secondary receiver there. And now look at all the receivers, Alec Pierce and A.D. Mitchell. Like, the whole point is that you're trying to get A.D. Mitchell to work. Now, because again, like we talked about with Joe Douglas, when you miss on a quarterback, it happens. Quarterback's the hardest position to fill. But when you do have a franchise quarterback, it makes all the sense in the world. So the Colts, when Andrew Luck retired, they had to deal with Jacoby Brissett. They had to deal with Jacob Eason. They had to deal with Sam Ehlinger. They had, Phillip Rivers. They also had to deal with Carson Wentz. Yes. And then Nick Foles. So
and Matt Ryan.
Yeah. And oh God, look at how much Matt Ryan eroded when he got to Atlanta or it got to Indy. But my thing is that they have been dying to get quarterback right since Andrew Luck retired. That's so hard for the Colts. But if he gets fired, I'll give him a call. I would. I'm serious. I'm serious because
he is a terrible GM.
No, I'm serious because here's the reason I say that, because I've defended Joe Douglas and I'm going to defend Chris Ballard, because if you recall, he has been accountable for the draft picks that he has hit on. The ones that he didn't, okay, whatever. Okay, quarterback we know is such a hard position to fill. Okay, that happens. Joe Douglas went through the same thing. You think Zach Wilson was a top prospected quarterback out of BYU? I didn't think that. Like, it was clear. Like, Trevor Lawrence, that quarterback draft class was so bad that only Trevor Lawrence was the only top-ranked quarterback in that draft class. So I feel like that if you took Joe Douglas and you took Chris Ballard and you put him in a different situation. So you know what I do feel Chris Ballard would work in? I feel like he would work in somewhere that I think is close, but they're not quite there yet as a roster. And I think he could build upon that. So because all you got to give him the quarterback, give him the coach. That's all you got to do. Or if you had just the quarterback. I mean, we saw this with Justin Herbert. The Chargers have a quarterback. All they needed was a coach, and all they needed was the GM so that they can go and make the picks. That's all they needed, and that's why the Chargers are looking so successful of a story right now, because of that culture build. And it's not just finding the culture coach itself, but they found the GM, they found the coach, they found a lot of his personnel because Justin Herbert was such a hot commodity. So it's like.
I don't mean to interrupt, but here's my thought process and why I would not choose Chris Ballard. Joe Douglas is different because Joe Douglas has had success with hitting on Braylon Allen, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson, Quentin Williams. And then he brings in, a lot of these free agents guys, and then also made big trades for guys like Devontae Adams. Chris Ballard has ignored the team so much, and I know this because of Derek Larger and everything, because with him being a Colts fan, he has ignored the team so much with a lot of the needs that he needed to address with the team, that he is just too selfish. Joe Douglas is not afraid to spend money to bring in free agents along with building in the draft. Yeah. I have not seen Chris Ballard open up the checkbook and bring in the guys that need to be brought in, and then also building in the draft. And not to mention, this past draft, when you had a chance to draft Quinyon Mitchell with that 15th pick, and you go and get Leatu Latu when your secondary is the weakest part of your team, and you need to address it, and after the injuries to guys like Kenny Moore and Juju Brents that you had, and now you are working with a third and fourth string corner, and nobody that has remotely good talent at all, You decide to go get an edge rusher when you can work with the edge rushers that you got and ignore the needs of the secondary. That's why they got blown out a lot of games, because they weren't able to stop anybody in the back half. He was ignoring a lot of the needs and ignoring a lot of the issues that they had. When you had Joe Douglas over here drafting guys like Sauce Gardner, and he brought in DJ Reed and everything and was able to get that. So there's a big difference between a guy like Joe Douglas, who knows how to bring in the talent and knows how to, sign the players that are needed, rather than a guy like Chris Ballard, who ignores what is important to your team, wants to build in other places, and then address that when it's absolutely the last resort. And we saw that with the quarterback, because he even said himself, I don't like drafting rookie quarterbacks because you don't know if they're going to hit. So that's why he kept going after veteran, after veteran, after veteran, until Jim Irsay stepped in and was just like, you draft a rookie or you draft a quarterback for this team or you're gone. So
yeah. Well, that's fair. That's fair. Well, and like I said, I mean, I'm defending Joe Douglas because I think a lot of people kind of have the whole narrative misconstrued. I really do. But I just feel like, I don't know. I may be right, I may be wrong on Chris Ballard, but I
agree with you on the Douglas thing, and
yeah,
I agree with you on Joe Douglas. I think that he is very successful, and I think that he did not deserve to get fired, but I do think that Chris Ballard deserves to get fired.
Yeah, well, and sometimes though those GMs, like, especially with like Chris Ballard's state. Like, I mean, sometimes those are learning things for him. It happens. So we'll see. We'll see. It'll be interesting. But good show. Good show this week. After everything that I've learned, like, throughout New York sports, because, I mean, I do not know what I would do with a week without New York. Seriously. It's like New York sports literally does this to all of us. There's always something that ends up going on. The only thing I have to say about the New York Jets and the New York Giants, and I could not have summed this up, about what a week it has been for the two of them, the only thing that I have for these two is this.
A 2-pack of ass.
That's all I got.
Oh God!
I mean, yeah. That's all.
If it
yeah.
wasn't for Eli Manning, the Giants wouldn't be anything. So.
Oh God. Yeah. Last successful quarterback for the Jets was Mark Sanchez. I mean, if it wasn't for him and it wasn't for, Rex Ryan, I mean, this is why I say I'm not leaving the door closed for Rex Ryan. I just feel like he's the only one that I think for the Jets, it makes sense if you don't get Mike Vrabel. Okay. The only one. But with any other team, it's like a complete reset. I don't know if that would work, but I feel like if it was just only the Jets, I could see him really bringing back a revival. I mean, again, regardless of what the successes or what had been there, I know I saw a different Jets team with Rex Ryan at the time. I know I saw it, and it was real. And that's why I'm like, I think what they have to account for now is because without Robert Saleh, you lost a bit of that. College sideline energy. And that's what I think he's trying to get back. So appreciate everybody for joining us here tonight and also joining us and hanging out with us all week long. Next week is going to be great. I'm going to be honest with you. It's been quite a while since we last had an interviewer here on the show. I'm going to work my magic to see who I may bring up. If you guys got a suggestion that we should interview next, let us know in the comments. Appreciate everybody for joining up on here. Appreciate all of you for hanging out all week long. Enjoy the week because next week, gobble, gobble, it's going to be nice. We're right there on Thanksgiving week. Well, we're very thankful for a lot of things in store for next week. tune in for that. We're going to have a lot of fun with it. It's going to be very exciting to get us through because Thanksgiving weekend games are going to be so much fun to watch when I watch them. Interesting matchups though this time. I mean, we are getting the Lions and Bears. We're getting some pretty good matchups. We'll talk more about that next week. So appreciate all of you guys for being here. Have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the college games tomorrow and then enjoy the Sunday and Monday night game. You know I'm getting prepared for that hard bowl matchup on Monday Night Football. So appreciate everybody for being here. Have a great weekend. We'll see you guys next week here on the show.